Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we're talking about the future of creativity with my guest, Kevin Willard. Let me tell you a little bit about Kevin. I know he's right here beside me, and it's always embarrassing that moment, as I introduce him with him sitting beside me. But you know what? I think there's some things you need to know about Kevin, and I want you all to be as as amazed by the things that he's doing as I am. So I'll start off by saying, Kevin, he's a bit of a futurist when it comes to creativity because he sees creativity as both decentralized, as trust driven, and as an ecosystem, one where independent creatives come together around resonance and not hierarchy. And coming out of the creative industry, I know how rare that is. His company, Assembly Entertainment, is the living expression of his vision. It's part creative collection, part talent amplifier, and fully committed to dissolving the rigid structures that have historically stifled innovation. Assembly isn't just a vendor list or a freelancer pool. It's an intentional constellation of human first, values aligned practitioners who collaborate on projects based on energetic fit and shared creative intention. Kevin believes that the creative industry is overdue for a reset from performative production to embodied expression, from selling ideas people don't need to building the ideas that people and companies can actually belong to. His work reflects a shift away from the interruption and persuasion model that has been present within advertising since its inception. And he's helping his clients embody presence, honesty, and story as connection. What Kevin is seeing is that creative isn't a department, it's a frequency. And Assembly is out front shaping that new signal. Kevin, welcome.
Thank you, Andrea. Well, that was a major build-up introduction. I'm not used to that, but I could have listened to you talk about me like that all day.
It's always a little awkward in those moments of listening to yourself, but sometimes you're like, oh, I never really thought of myself that way. That's interesting.
Well, I love so much about what you do and how you kind of just your ability to kind of dig in and find the story inside me, my mission, and what we're up to has been really enlightening for and inspirational for me, and definitely something that will continue to push into assembly as we grow into the oblivion.
you know, well, Kevin, I know you had a recent experience that we're going to get to at some point, but and you've posted about it. You went to con and you didn't go to the main event, and I'm going to hold that one back. But what I want to maybe start with is, in that build up that I just opened with, we got to see you as this non-traditional creative person, and I know what the creative industry is like, and there's lots of people who call themselves non-traditional, but I think you are really out there walking the walk, and talking the talk. And what happened? What made you decide to leave those traditional models and say that you were going to take the risk and jump in with your 2 feet and do things differently? What got you there?
Well, I would say first, what got me there is necessity. I think as this industry is evolving as fast as it is and changing and shifting, what are we, the question for me was, what can I do as an individual person to respond to the change, to own that change, and to use that change to advance, me and my vision and how I see the future. So I think that has been the first sort of big fundamental shift for me is just realizing that the industry in and of itself, there's more greater, sorry if anyone's inside those bigger traditional agency settings, and no disrespect, but I truly believe over the last couple of years especially there's there's greater talent outside the traditional agency setting as independent forces than there is inside those traditional agency walls. And one thing as an independent creative, I, kind of came to realize was like, man, we like to work on the projects and get the briefs handed to us, but new business and kind of searching for that next thing is we oftentimes spend so much time doing that, we're less invested in the work in front of us
Yeah.
because we're thinking
Yeah.
about what's next. So that's hard.
Yeah, of course.
And so part of that was like, well, how can I tap into all this talent? How can I collect them in a way? How can I be a magnet for them so that we can create some of the best work of our careers? And I say our careers because I feel like the best work is ahead of me, ahead of anyone who joins forces with us as an independent. Um, I believe we can do really anything we want to do, as big as anybody, as big as any other agency, or as big as any other business. So that's sort of like the shift, I guess. The shift of, hey, there's all these people out there in the world, who've recently left or have, been pushed out the back door of these agencies, and they've developed these LLCs and these independent companies. And there's also the rise in the independent agency world, and like, I'm selfish. I want to grab all that. I want to be able to work with who I want to work with when I want to work with them, and I want to be able to make changes on the fly as needed. And I think when you're inside a these four walls of a more structured sort of system, you can't do that. You can't afford to pull in other outside talent, and or if you can, it's usually pretty last minute and it's not really structured or ingrained in the team. So that's the start of it. And then I think realizing that just brands need better stories. There, there's a lack of like just good stories out in the world, and brands all have them. And entertainment is the essence of storytelling.
And it is. I mean, entertainment, when we think of advertising in general, it is a storytelling medium, right? It is an important storytelling medium. And and yet it's been used in such a way that it has been about, as I said in my opening, about persuasion and, trying to get people to think a certain way. And I think storytelling always helps us to understand things, and that's key. But I think what you're doing at Assembly, and where I think you're taking creativity, from what I've learned from you, is that you're looking at it as a multi-layered thing. It's not one thing, it's many things. And I think we've kind of forgotten that, and we're in a world where collaboration has never been easier. And so your world, Assembly, I think that's what it's all about, right? That's why it's called Assembly. It's about the collaboration. And I know over the last few months you've been talking to a lot of creatives. I think it was like over 100 in the last few months. What have you heard from them? What are they telling you?
Oh my gosh, I've heard so much from them over the last few months, and it's just conversations. And I think one of the biggest things that, earlier on in my career, I was good at talking, and even, up until the last few years, just good at talking and hearing my own self, speak. But I think the most powerful thing anyone can do is listen. And I was really curious. First, it started with just general curiosity of like what people are up to. I want to, we're only as big as the bubbles that we create for ourselves. So if I can open my calendar up to specific, just to anyone who wants to have a conversation. I don't care. I don't pre-vet. I want to talk to you first. I don't even look at people's work before I talk with them. I like to look at it after, because then I can put like a face and a fingerprint to it. But what I've been hearing is just, you know, I feel like just maybe a little bit of helplessness and a little bit of like they want, the creative community just wants to be part of more meaningful work. They want that inspiration. They want that spark. They want to work with people who believe in craft as much as they do, and they want to feel part of something and not as a little cog in the wheel. And I think they want to be seen. And I think that's what's important, which is part of why, anything that we do, there's that exact visibility. Like I promote their contribution to the table. I've always hated that about other like traditional agency set where you kind of put freelancers and those people label them as vendors or whatever, or put them behind a big, red curtain, and you can't, and they just become the product of whatever that agency is. And for me, it's like you bring in these like really unique people to into this like environment, and you need to celebrate each one of those people. I get excited about like if I have a person, a specific person with this skill set or a specific agency that does these things or this producer or that production company or this writer or art director, whatever it is, if I have them, I'm excited about it. I want them to succeed. I want them to be able to promote themselves. And I just want to be a magnet to like suck it all together and be able to use my creative vision to bring it forward.
And where does that take you though? Like, when you've got that broad of a network and you're hearing from people that what they want is um, to be able to add their expertise in a way that is layered, that is collaborative, that is um, that that allows for the full expression of their talent. Where does that take you creatively? What do you see as a result from that type of creative, collective approach?
Unexpected, I would say. I think that, there's certainly risk involved in building teams and structuring things that way, but I feel like for me, risk has always been something that's like been my friend. It's I kept it close because it's a little something I'm a little bit scared of at times, but I never let it win. Um, and I think the way the response to like, hey, what was missing for me? It was like, hey, if you're going out and you want to talk, like just the ability to talk to someone, the ability to have someone answer or respond to an email is like rare these days. And I think if you can, tap back into the humans that are out there and exist and make them feel seen and heard, then it's only going to contribute to the wildness that comes out of what we create here. I think most of we're all sort of rallied around the same thing. We all at least when you come in, you drink this Kool-Aid, and the Kool-Aid is, you know, don't make advertising. You're here to make entertainment. We're here to look at the audience like the entertainment industry looks at the audience, not how, we learn about audience in our marketing classes where they're this target and they're faceless. We want to create work that looks at people in the eyes. And I think that's what we're getting to.
That's really we want to create work that that looks people in the eyes. So, that's, I mean, we do a lot of video these days. We all do, right? It's such an important part of our business. And video is one of those things that it can be it can be a medium of truth and it can be a medium of deception. And and I think we've all experienced that in the last few years with social media and influencers and seeing a curated reality. Um, but you said that risk and truth are central to your creative identity. And what does it look like now taking creative risks in this new world that you've gone to? If video is a form of truth or deception, what does creative risk look like for you?
Risk looks like honesty. Honestly, it looks like if you can find the truth, that's where the tension is. The thing that's hard to say, the thing that you don't necessarily want to like point out, or maybe you haven't found it, or you haven't seen it because you've been hiding from it for so long. But I've always been um, unapolog I don't know if I'm unapologetically. I do say sorry if I say the wrong thing, but I've always been myself, and whether I've been a CCO or whether just a junior copywriter or something, I've always I haven't changed my sort of approach to people, and it's just like treating them like humans and trying to um, make them feel free and safe to create and make things, and especially to to fail. I hate like when agencies and bosses and leaders try to diminish sort of like that creative spirit by, you know, really making them feel like shit, really, if like they don't get the problem solved on the first try, or they, or they're not putting up, you shouldn't be scared to put ideas on the wall. You shouldn't be scared to share things, and that's where the great work starts, when you can tap into that, when you can tell the truth.
Mm. Truth in, in creativity is so important, and it's so hard to get to, right? Because I think by its very nature, the going from our creative minds into a medium, there's a distillation process that happens. And I, having worked with many different creative people in my career, it's the ability to have that rawness that is so important. And I teased it out earlier. You had this experience recently. For those in the ad world, they'll know what con is, of course. But for those of you who maybe aren't as familiar, it is basically the Oscars of advertising. It's a big event that happens in France on in the French Riviera. It's beautiful and very curated, and there are all kinds of sessions, but there's also these award ceremonies that happen throughout it, and it is kind of the place to see and be seen. And I know that, Kevin, you had an experience, and I know you just wrote a three-part LinkedIn series on it, but for those who maybe haven't seen it, do you want to give us some background on what happened and what took you there and what that experience was like? Because I found it, as somebody coming out of advertising, absolutely fascinating. And I will give a little bit away, is that Kevin never made it to the main event. Um, but that actually was part of the plan. And I think this is where some of your truth comes in. So tell us that story.
Well, first, I never made it to the main event, and not because I went on some like French Rivieran bender.
Although that would have been a story in and of
Although,
itself.
yeah, I was tempted to rent a motorcycle and just go up to the mountains, for the instead of stand around in the heat. But next time, I guess. So what took me there? I think as any creative, like, you in the industry, like, that's a place that you like either wish to be sent to by an agency, would love to go there and collect an award, would love to just like be part of it. And for so many of us, and I was this person until like I took charge and put it in my own hands and swiped my credit card and went. Um, I never had an agency offer to take me there. I've never, I've my recent history with smaller agencies, that's not really necessarily our reality. We're not going to we wouldn't pay, all the money that it costs to enter into an award. And if we did, it would just be like one, we would enter like one award in like one category. So this place felt pretty unattainable, and it starts to feel like it's something like a place that you don't belong to. And that makes you feel like on the outskirts of things. And so I was scared, and I didn't want to like, I was waiting for a while, like, hey, maybe I'll make this thing and we'll get out there, or whatever it is, or maybe I'll get. And then it's just like, you know what? I got this invite from Collins House, from Collins, the design firm, and they, you know, set it up for me like something that I couldn't, say no to. It was like, come to this place out on the outskirts, like perfect. Like, I don't like to be super like surrounded by all the people and the those loud music and the sort of like superficial reason why
Yeah.
people are there to party. Like, I was making an investment in myself and the future of assembly by trying to get on a global in a global environment where I can reach other people who I never would have met, in other worlds. In these, it's like, again, we talk about me trying to be a magnet. I was first sort of like absorbing, magnetizing myself, like trying to like rub off on, get some of the dust, that stardust that I, was able to connect with so many different people. But for me, it was like I was, it was a place that just called to me. Like, I wanted to be there. I needed to be there. I like doing things like last minute. I thought for me, it felt completely worth. There wasn't any risk. Like, I didn't have an agenda. I just wanted to go and experience.
And so while you were there, so this idea that, and I think it was just a couple of days before the event, you jump onto an airplane, you fly off to the French Riviera, no ticket to the main event. You've got an invitation from this design agency, Collins, who has said, "Hey, we're doing this thing, why not come?" And what happened when you got there?
I mean, I've never felt like I belong somewhere until like I don't know. I guess you feel like you belong to somewhere, like in certain aspects of your life. But like I'm used to kind of just being on the outskirts, whether it's like a small agency background or just like my independent spirit. I'm used to sort of like not feeling like I'm fitting in. So that wasn't an unfamiliar feeling for me. It was just sort of like, okay, I know that I'm just gonna like take the big gulp and just walk through these gates. And I couldn't have been more delighted by how welcoming everybody was. I think it's interesting when people are all in a different place, far away from home. You have this like immediate connection because you're all sort of in the same boat. I saw the same people, day after day, and we were able to really connect and have meaningful conversations that I'm, still having to this, weeks after. So that's sort of what I got it from it.
And I think what I'm listening to, and if staying on this topic, going to these large sort of award events where we are being, in amongst our peers, and it's sort of like, oh, we've made it when we go to this thing, right? Because that's kind of the message that's given in the industry of like, if you get to go, you're really at the top of your game. But what I'm hearing from you is to say, look, yeah, okay, sure, that may be part of it. But if we're talking about the future of creativity, which is what our topic is today, you went to this not because you wanted to see and be seen. You went because you wanted to be part of something that was future forward, that was giving you inspiration in a way you couldn't get elsewhere. And I know this because we've had these conversations. And you saw some of like top speakers, like that wasn't just a place to hang out, it was its own event, correct? And
Yes.
tell me about your inspiration from that event. What has that done for you and changed the way in which you're seeing the world now?
I think it allows me to see myself as something bigger. You get inspired by all these people, and that's what they are. They're just they're other humans just like you who have their own visions and their own way of doing things, and they've whether whatever their circumstance was, they're there, they're in that seat, they're sitting in front, and they're sharing their stories, and you start to just kind of like, well, why can't I, that like I have a story to tell. You start to like you start to just sort of like absorb it and then feel like it's something that you can be part of. And so I think that's what I got my inspiration from. I wrote something before that the headlines kind of sticks with me, but it's you belong where you show up, and I really believe that.
Mm.
If you have the, if you take the leap and you get into those environments, you can belong there. You can feel a little awkward a little bit at times, but just get into conversations with people and be honest and vulnerable, and it all sort of comes out.
What inspired you while you were there?
What inspired me? Well, I love going to things like that where it was a recharge for me, like a creative recharge. Every year trying to do something a little bit different, a little bit further away, a little bit, yeah, definitely on that, like, should I do this, spectrum sort of thing. And I come back and I feel so like energized. It's almost like its own vacation in and of itself of like, you're inspired by the people you meet, the conversations that you have, and then the possibility you sort of like take from those places, and you want to be able to apply those things or use that as fuel to advance.
As we think about that, I mean, inspiration is such a big part of creativity. And I always love to look at history to help us look forward. And if I look at throughout history, creativity has always been something that allows us to communicate in ways that that are not so overt, like if we think of the Renaissance painters and the way in which they used visual art to convey forbidden messages, right? There's things coded into those messages. It was a population that was largely illiterate, and therefore the visual art itself formed its own form of communication. And as you look forward, so if we think of that as sort of like, okay, well, that's a history, and we did that in advertising. I was actually talking my most recent podcast, and we were talking a little bit about the origins, back in the 70s of subliminal advertising, where they were in the ice cubes, in a drink, there were words that were hidden, or the images in between the frames of a video, things that are we don't do to, well, I hope we don't do today, but was popular and then became outlawed. But as we look forward, what do you see? Like, these are all things, they're parts of the history of creativity. But where is creativity going in the future? What do you see? Given your experience, given your background, given this most recent experience of being in Cannes, what do you see moving forward for creativity? Where are we going as a creative, collective?
Well, I think for one, I think it's what you allow yourself to see and sort of what you kind of want to tune out. And I think tuning out of certain things, specific narratives or other things, is a good way to sort of just keep your focus on what it is that you want to do. Me, being a writer and like born storyteller, lifelong, thing, like no computer or anything is going to take that away from me. But I think if you, keep swallowing all the negativity out there about specific things, and you lose focus, it is on the value that you can actually add or bring to. So it's, I think where the future of creativity is honestly wherever you want to take it without getting too caught up in um, specific, capabilities within the advancements of AI and other things. But the future of creativity for me is assembly. It's empowering independent people, agencies, and things to come together to create, meaningful work that elevates brands, but does it in a way that relies on their truth and um, entertainment. I mean, I think we take ourselves like way too seriously when it comes to like how we try to project our brands and our vision onto the world, and it could be a serious thing, but like whatever, if you're a specific organization or something. But I think getting stuck in conforming to what's now, and being fearful of communicating specific things, you're just going to kind of bury yourself.
Mhm. So it sounds like so much of it is it's the combination of entertainment, because of course we want to be entertained, and I think in these times that we're in, entertainment is such an important piece of it. But the other piece is truth, that raw truth.
Yeah. I mean, advertising isn't going anywhere. It's here to sort of like stay. And I think Assembly is a result of just seeing how much of it sucks, and how much of it is built like smoke and mirrors. And it's just, it's interruptive. It's in your face. Nobody actually likes it. Most all the creatives I talk to, like they don't like the things that they're making, but they feel like they have to make them because that's what the client or that's what their boss is telling them to do. And so, what if we took away those barriers and we started making our meaningful work and pushing our own sort of agendas that we see how we see the world, with our own expertise? Then um, I think that you can't lose.
Mm. Well, I think that's the perfect message to end on. Kevin, thank you so much for this conversation. And as we end, tell our guests, how can they keep in touch with you? How can they learn more about Assembly and maybe even work with you?
Well, great. Well, as I said a while ago, I opened up my calendar. I've been talking to many creatives every day. I have an afternoon full of conversations later. So I will keep an eye out on my LinkedIn. I'll reopen my calendar after the month of August. I need like a month break to take in all these conversations. It's thousands of pages of transcripts, and it's going to turn into something pretty interesting because like of just what I'm kind of finding from like just the insights from those conversations. So check me out on LinkedIn. I'm always posting something. And then assemblyco.com, ASMBLYCO.com is sort of is our like website presence. But yeah, reach out to me any way you want, and I'd love to have a conversation.
Well, thank you. And for our guests, thank you for joining us with this for this conversation. And I just want to leave you sort of with, one thought about what Kevin has given us today is that when we think about the future of creative and the work that he's doing is it's transforming creative into an operating system that centers on truth, humanity, and actual connection. And so that's what he's doing. And how are you doing this in your world? Because we are all creative and we all have the opportunity to impact the future. So I'd love to hear from you in the comments below, and make sure that you follow both Kevin here on LinkedIn and myself, because we both do this kind of thing fairly often. And you never know what type of a conversation you're going to stumble on. So thanks so much for joining us today. And we'll see you real soon in the next conversation.
Thank you.